Hey gang, what's up? Kind of a new background. Is this going to be really disconcerting? Like I'm looking down at the camera. But it's actually trying to get the lighting. I'm in my bedroom right now, and I'm just trying to get some good lighting. It's cold again today, so I'm kind of under my futon. This is right here. And kind of all bundled up. But I'm getting a lot of emails and PMs. The interviews are happening. Now, in the UK, it looks like the interviews already took place in January, but the US list just got published, so you can go and check and see if your name or number is on the list, and then you'll know you got an interview, and you should get a follow-up email from your consulate. And most people, I think, have so far. So this is kind of my 2011, hey, the jet interviews are going to happen vlog. um, I don't have a whole lot to add to previous vlogs I've made, and of course, in the description box below, it's funny to watch my old videos how I used to point how it's on the side, and now, of course, it's down below. I will put a link to the Applying to Jet playlist. Most of you have probably looked at it if you're, keeping up with the application and now the interview. But there's a bunch of good vlogs in there that I made about 2 years ago. The ones numbered with 3 digits, 100, 101, 102. Those are the ones that concern specifically the interview. And then I've made some follow-ups. And I got some good feedback, made some notes from some users who were kind enough to send in their experience. So if you're interviewing for the UK and it's already happened, I apologize that this was not more timely, but what we can do is now talk about it, and hopefully in coming years this information will be beneficial, and hopefully to those of you who are going to do the US interview, you can glean some stuff from this. And I'll talk a little bit about my experience a year ago in 2010 when I actually was on the interview panel in Los Angeles. I can't talk about everything that went on, but I can give you some hints and pointers perhaps. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the UK interview. Danny Kamejin, his screen name here on YouTube, sent me a very nice email, fairly detailed about what he experienced at his UK interview in London. And I'll point out some things that are different. The UK applicants have to take a grammar test. He said it only took about 5 minutes, but it was harder than he thought it would be. He remembers one question specifically was something like, it was the word affect and effect. AFFECT and EFFECT, and you had to put them into, there was 2 blanks and you had to use them properly in the sentence, for example. And, these kinds of things. So they had to be prepared a little bit to show that they, knew a little bit about English grammar, which I think is good. He had the same kind of we don't have that in America. I haven't heard of any American consulate that gives its interviewees a test. So I think that's maybe only in the UK. Now, if you've interviewed in Australia or New Zealand or South Africa, please, leave a comment or send me a PM and tell me about how it is in your country, because obviously I have no knowledge. So I'd be happy to hear. He had the same 3 people panel that's very standard. It is that way in most American consulates. There's usually going to be 1 former jet, and then 1 or 2 Japanese people. They might be Japanese American. In the case of America, they might be actually born in Japan and working in the consulate. So maybe their English isn't quite as good, and they tend to speak less. And he felt like his panel, they were doing a little bit of good cop, bad cop. Like, they would kind of, somebody would say something kind of nice, like, oh, I see here on your application it says you're into this and this. And then, another person would go, well, how would you handle this situation, type of thing. And he felt like actually the British person that was on his panel was actually being the bad cop most of the time. But don't let that phase you. They do that to kind of see how you will react to, possible adverse situations that you may encounter coming to a foreign country, since most of you have never lived here before. One thing he was asked to do in his interview, and I I don't quite know how much he put on his application about how much he had studied Japanese, but they actually asked him to introduce himself in Japanese. Um, and they asked him about his Japanese ability, which I don't think is quite something that happens in the American um, interviews, unless, like it says, you've studied Japanese for 3 years in high school and 2 years in college. Well, then they would expect you to be able to converse a little bit. But of course, you can apply to JET and speak zero Japanese and still get in. Um, and I've talked about the fact that in at least the West Coast interviews I've heard about in San Francisco and LA, we don't ask a lot of questions about current Japanese politics or Japanese history. But he was asked, do you know a lot about, the relationship between England and Japan, or do you know who the current prime minister was? He was actually asked that question. Um, so he did need to know a little bit. And so it's not a bad idea to bone up on that stuff. But if you're an American wanting to get in, I don't think you're going to be asked those questions, but you might be. I hate to use the term, but ESID, every situation is different. Another UK applicant who was nice enough to email me, Jamie, um, he said that, he indicated on his application that he had had a lot of previous teaching experience. So they didn't spend a lot of the time in his interview talking to him about teaching. There was no mock lesson, there wasn't anything like that. They talked to him more about other things, why he wanted to go to Japan, etc. So, and I'll back that up. I mean, we definitely look at your application, look at your letters of recommendation, and try to tailor some questions to, things that you've mentioned in your essay and that are, apparent from your application. So, I mean, the good thing about the interview is it's all about you, right? You're answering questions about yourself. But it's good to be familiar with what you've put on the application and what you wrote in the essay. I hope all of you made copies before you sent it in. So you can, brush up on yourself and give good answers to questions that arise. Somebody emailed me and said, when I go in, should I bow? As in, like, konnichiwa or hajimemashite. And no, don't do that. If you want to go in, if hands are extended for shaking hands, then do that. But to be honest, like in my panel and when I was interviewed way back in 2004, the three people are going to be sitting behind desks with papers on top, and you're going to be sat in a chair, kind of 6 feet away, in front of the three of us as the interviewers, and we probably won't extend our hands at the beginning. You'll just be brought in by an attendant, and we'll say, "Oh, please sit down," and there won't be any like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like shaking hands type stuff. So I wouldn't even worry about that. It's not impolite necessary. At the end, if you want to then get up from your seat and approach the desk and shake hands, or say thank you for your time or something, of course feel free to do so. But I really don't think that that's something you need to worry too much about. What else can I say? I think I mentioned this in my vlog from 2010 when I talked about the interview. But your applications are read by a reader type of person who, it's like in Hollywood when they read a script and they put this thing called coverage on the script. Okay, so it's like a one-page like summary of what the script is about. Well, your application is kind of the same thing. Somebody, not the three of us, goes through and reads the applications, and this is all part of them weeding out who gets the interview or not. Everything in your application is given at a point value, and out of 100 points, let's say, your essay is given so many points in your letters of recommendation and, what you put in the sections. So you have to get a minimum number of points to then, I guess, even be considered for the interview. And so we see that breakdown. And we also see, the blurbs that they talk about, your basic, this person studied this, or this person is currently studying this, and they said they want to go to Japan because. We're given a copy of your essay, but honestly, we don't have a whole lot of time on the day as interviewers to read the 2 pages. Sometimes there's things underlined or circled or highlighted for us to look at. Um, we don't usually have time to read the 2 letters of recommendation. But we're given a little packet of information about you. And from that, we glean some questions. But some of that is taken directly from the coverage the reader has done that says, this person studied Japanese for 3 years in college, but they got, C grades, meaning they got like 75% in Japanese. If they want to go to Japan, why did they not put more effort into studying Japanese? Maybe ask them about this. And it says in those kind of terms, maybe you should ask them about this. Or this person gave uh, the form to this professor to fill out the recommendation letter, and the letter was mostly good, but it also mentioned these weaknesses. What do they have to, ask them what they have to say about this. So these are the kind of things that we then, in the literally, like, we have a little bit of time in the morning before we start, and because you remember the interviews are like, they work the interviewers pretty hard that day, and we see a bunch of you in a row. I think most ALTs, we're given kind of a half an hour, 20 minutes of that is like where we get to talk to you, and 10 minutes is where we get to like write some thoughts down and make some evaluations. I was involved in CIR interviews. So there's additional steps there. There's a Japanese test, an oral test that you have to undergo if you want to be a CIR, where you're given a sheet of a piece of paper with a paragraph or two in Japanese, and you have to be able to read it silently to yourself, and then we ask you to read it out loud, and then you have to answer questions about it. So, and then if you do well, you're usually given a second sheet where where we recognize that you did well enough on the first sheet that we want to see some more. All I can say is, what else can I say? One other thing I'll add about the CIR, I interviewed 6 people on my day, and then of course I went later in July and said goodbye to everyone as they flew off in Group A to Japan. And I saw 3 faces from my interview, so half of my people made it. But interestingly, a 4th person made it and turned the job down. So somebody from the alternate list got put in his place. And I know this person, and he told me that it was because he specifically asked, and we talked about it in the interview, he's married to a Japanese woman. He wanted to go and do JET so they could move and be close to his wife's parents, who live in a certain place in Japan, and he did not get placed in that place, and that was his main reason for wanting to go. So he said no, because he had a good job in America that he would have been giving up. And then one of the people that I even kind of nudged this was, he interviewed for CIR, and his language skills were so-so, and he was very young, just out of college, and I said, you know what, after we interviewed him, I was interviewing with 2 Japanese people, I was like, and we ask all the CIR applicants this, would you consider going as an ALT if we can't find a place for you as a CIR? Because there's very few, like only 10% of JETs are CIRs, and 90% are ALTs. And we basically offered him the position as an ALT instead, and he accepted. And I think he actually, because of that, he got put on the alternate list, high up on the alternate list, and actually got in as an alternate. But I was happy to see him there. So what else can I tell you briefly about the briefly? It's already at 14 minutes. About the interview. Dress nicely. Every year there's going to be a story about a guy who shows up in frickin' jeans and a hoodie, and then you see him on the plane later, and he's going with you to Japan. You're like, really? And I guess if that happened and I was the interviewer and he was just wow, like in the interview you would disregard the clothing, but why take that chance? I mean, you want to make a good impression, dress nicely. If you're a guy, wear a suit and a tie. If you're a girl, maybe a business suit, or something very nice. It's a job. You're applying for a job. JET is a job. It's a job interview. Don't worry too much about the mock lesson. We talk about this, and maybe that was in vogue 4 or 5 years ago when I was interviewed, which was actually now, more than 6 years ago. And it's now less interesting. And some of it could be this, could be the internet. People get on, you know, uh, Japan forums and talk about their interview, and so certain things that happen in the interview get out, and maybe at the hey, let's train the interviewers meeting, they say, you know what, this year let's not do any mock lessons because everybody's thinking that's going to come, and let's not. And so maybe they've changed because I haven't heard about it so much in America anymore. But it probably still does happen. So it's a good idea. And I'm going to actually put a link down in the box to a guy I found on YouTube. He was one of the recommended movies on videos on next to one of my videos, and I clicked on it, and I'd never seen his videos before, and his name must be Daniel, and he must have been either a Jet or a different, an Interact, although I don't know if they had Interact back then, teacher. And he was posting videos way when I first started, like in 2006, 2007. And he hasn't, logged on to his channel in like 2 years or something, but he has about 30 videos up, and they're all fairly short, like a minute or 2 minutes. And he filmed inside his schools, which is pretty much now you're not allowed to do anymore. But the videos are up there on YouTube, and so it's a good idea to see kind of what some of the types of lessons he was able to do with elementary school students and their reaction and stuff. And he's got some cute stuff on there, some fun lesson ideas, and some stuff that all Jets end up doing, certain games and stuff we all end up playing. But if you've never taught that age group before, it's not a bad idea to go on and have a look and see kind of what some of the what you're getting in for, unless you ask to be placed in a high school. Because if you didn't get asked to be placed in a high school specifically, you're probably going to end up teaching some shogakko. It's just, especially with the push now to get the 5th and 6th graders up on English before they ever even get to junior high. So yeah, just be prepared, do a little research, go on Wikipedia, find out a little bit about Japan, the current prime minister, his last name is Khan. Find out a few things. Don't worry if you've never studied Japanese, don't try to learn how to say hello, my name is, or, don't, in that sense, as an ALT candidate, I would be honest. If they say, do you know a lot about Japan or something, say, no, I don't. But, always, whenever you're giving a negative answer in any interview situation, put a positive spin on it. Well, what's your greatest weakness, Jason? Well, my greatest weakness is sometimes I get so involved in something that I'm doing, I just laser focus in on it, and I forget to think about some of the other things that are happening, and I can get too intense. I mean, you try to take, something that's that they want something negative from you, and turn it into some kind of like, well, that's a positive attribute that he's really focused or something. So that kind of thing is my advice. Try to think about some of the things they're going to ask you based on what you wrote in your own application, in your own essay. Obviously, you've never seen the letters of rec unless the professor, gave you a second copy outside of the sealed envelope and said, here's what I wrote, which one of my professors did when I did mine. He's like, here's what's inside. The other person didn't, but I knew she wrote something nice. Good luck. Don't stress too much about it. The conventional wisdom, and I don't think this is quite as true anymore because of the statistics about acceptance rates. And obviously I'm talking mostly about America here. I don't know what it is in some of the smaller countries. It used to be if you got to the interview, it was almost kind of like the job was yours to lose. Like we weren't so much confirming that you were like the best person for the job at the interview stage. We were weeding out the people that just didn't deserve to be there. And now, of course, that was maybe back when 1 out of every 3 people made it in. Now it's like 1 out of every 6 people make it in. I also got a really nice video from a guy who didn't make it to the interview stage even, and he made a video about like, hey, I didn't make it, and what's going to happen now, and he's going to try again. If you didn't make the interview, I don't know why you'd still be watching this at the 20-minute mark, but try again next year. You never know, but don't just reapply exactly the same. Something has to change. One guy came back to us and was interviewing for the second time with us. when I was an interviewer last year, and we're like, okay, well, what's changed between when you didn't quite make the cut last year and now? And because he was an alternate his first time, and he reapplied because he didn't get called up, but he was trying again for CIR, and there's just so fewer CIRs that go through. Um, so if you don't make it, you should show that you study Japanese, or that you did a summer program where you volunteered with kids, or you took a TEFL course or something that shows that you wanted to make some kind of change that makes you more viable for the position than when you got rejected the first time. Get different letters of rec, or redo your essay or something. Anyway, okay, so good luck on the interview. I know you guys will all do great. I hope I get some good positive PMs. I know in Arizona and Los Angeles, the interviews are at the very end of February. Um, so you guys have about a couple weeks. Don't stress too much about it. And then unfortunately, as I've even made a whole video about, the waiting begins again. And it's almost worse. Like if you didn't make the interview, it's like now you can like go, okay, I can apply to this grad school, or I can decide to go get this job, or I can, you can concentrate on your finals or something. But if you make it to the interview, it's just like more and more waiting, because it's about April, I think, before the people in the interview find out whether they got into JET or not. And then, of course, there's more waiting to find out where you go in Japan, etc. So it's a lot of waiting. But yeah, of course, leave questions below if you have any. I'll do my best, but please do look at the playlist. I'll put the link, like I said, down below. Look at those videos first. I think there's some good information there. And just type in JET interview into the YouTube search bar. And beyond me, there's other people out there that have made videos. I know there's a lot of JETs who watched my videos in 2008, came over in 2009, and then while it was still fresh in their brain as first years, made videos. Jessica, I think Eli, Nonstop to Tokyo, Constantine. There's a bunch of people out there that have made videos about their JET interview. So, just search JET interview, and I'm sure you'll find other interesting videos about the subject too, beyond just mine. Okay? Thanks for watching. Good luck, like I said. Next episode will be another 2 cents in 2 minutes. Thanks for watching those, guys. And have a fun weekend. I'm about to watch the Super Bowl tomorrow morning. It's on live here in Japan at 8 a.m. on a Monday, so I'm taking a half day off work to watch the Super Bowl. And I don't really care who wins. I just hope it's a good game. But I'll say go Packers. We'll see if I'm right. Okay, peace. See ya.